All right, good morning, school. 6:20. We're in School of Light. We're a correspondence nonprofit organization, Bible study, and we give Bible studies through the mail. If you're interested and you want to study and grow on a structured, doctrinally sound Bible study program that comes through the mail, we will send it to you. There's a prepaid, stamped, prepaid, pre-stamped, addressed envelope that whenever you fill out your series and answer your questions, you put the answers in the pre-addressed envelope, send it back to us. We make a record of it, put it on your record, and as you complete series, we send you series certificates of completion, and some of the series can actually yield college credit, transfer into college credit, whether you're young or old or whatever, if that's what you're geared for. So let's hop right to chapter 11 of Leviticus. Excuse me one moment. Let me get kind of situated because I'm already motivated. One thing I want to say, folks, is that if you feel like you're in a position where you're really down, where you're really hurt, man, I pray that you will come out of that, because I was there. Certain words from certain friends at certain times, timely words, boom, I hope it works for you like it did for me, where those things just, it feels like a C4 blew them out of the water, or blew the obstacle out of my path, and then I started just really pouring into the Word to keep that momentum, and the God's Word is an influence. Sometimes you might not even notice it's influencing you, but it does, and it's been influencing me here, and I hope it does the same for you in a positive and inspiring way. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, say to the Israelites, of all the animals that live on land, these are the ones that you may eat. You may eat any animal that has a split hoof completely divided and that chews the cud. There are some only that chew the cud or only have a split hoof, but you must not eat them. The camel, though it chews the cud, does not have a split hoof. It is ceremonially unclean for you. The coney, though it chews the cud, does not have a split hoof. It is unclean for you. The rabbit, though it chews the cud, does not have a split hoof. It is unclean for you. And the pig, though it has a split hoof, completely divided, does not chew the cud. It is unclean for you. You must not eat their meat or touch their carcasses. They are unclean for you. Of all the creatures living in the water and in the seas and the streams, you may eat any that have fins and scales, but all creatures in the sea or streams that do not have fins or scales, whether among the swarming things or among all the other living creatures in the water, you are to detest. And since you are to detest them, you must not eat their meat, and you must detest their carcasses. Anything living in the water that does not have fins and scales is to be detestable to you. These are the birds you are to detest and not eat, because they are detestable: the eagle, the vulture, the black vulture, the red kite, and any kind of black kite, any kind of raven, the horned owl, screech owl, a gull, any kinds of hawks, the little owl, the cormorant, the great owl, the white owl, the desert owl, the osprey, the stork, any kind of heron, the hoopoe, and the bat. All flying insects that walk on all floors are to be detestable to you. They are, however, some winged creatures that walk on all fours that you might eat. Those have jointed legs for hopping on the ground. Of these you may eat of any kind of locust, catbid, cricket, or grasshopper. But all the other green creatures that have 4 legs you are to detest. You will not make yourselves unclean by these. Or correction, you will make yourselves unclean by these. Whoever touches their carcasses will be unclean till evening. Whoever picks up one of the carcasses must wash his clothes, and he will be unclean till evening. Every animal that has a split hoof, not completely divided, or that does not chew the cud, is unclean for you. Whoever touches the carcass of any of them will be unclean. Of all the animals that walk on all fours, Those that walk on their paws are unclean for you. Well, whoever touches their carcasses will be unclean till evening. Anyone who picks up the carcasses must wash his clothes and will be unclean till evening. They are unclean for you. Unclean for you. All the animals that move about on the ground, these are unclean for you. The weasel, the rat, any kind of great lizard, the gecko, the monitor lizard, the wall lizard, the skink, and the chameleon. Of all those that move along the ground, these are unclean for you. Whoever touches them when they are dead will be unclean till evening. When one of them dies and falls in something, that article, whatever it is, will be unclean. Whether it's made out of wood, cloth, or hide or sackcloth. Put it in water, it will be unclean till evening, and then it will be clean. If one of them falls into a clay pot, everything in it will be unclean, and you must break the pot. Any food that could be eaten but has water on it from such a pot is unclean, and any liquid that could be drank from it is unclean. Anything that one of their carcasses falls on becomes unclean. An oven or cooking pot must be broken up. They are unclean, and you are to regard them as unclean. A spring, however, or a cistern for collecting water remains clean, but anyone who touches one of these carcasses is unclean. If a carcass falls on any seed that are to be planted, they remain unclean. But if water has been put on the seed and a carcass falls on it, it is unclean for you. If an animal that you are allowed to eat dies, anyone who touches the carcass will be unclean till evening. Anyone who eats some of the carcass must wash his clothes, and he will be unclean till evening. Anyone who picks up the carcass must wash his clothes, and he will be unclean till evening. Every creature that moves about on the ground is detestable. It is not to be eaten. You are not to eat any creature that moves about on the ground, whether it moves on its belly or walks on all fours or on many feet. It is detestable. Do not defile yourselves by any of these creatures. Do not make yourselves unclean by means of them or made unclean by them. I am the Lord your God. Consecrate yourselves and be holy, because I am holy. Do not make yourselves unclean by any creature that moves about on the ground. Any creature. And nowadays it's not, I touched a pig and I'm unclean. You know, a lot of that has really was really established for dietary guidelines for their protection while they were in the desert and moving about through the promised land. So how do we apply that today? You know, you can't really go to say Outback and you order a pork chop. Oh man, that's an unclean. You should have ordered a steak, because that's not detestable to the Lord, right? It has a split hoof. Yeah? No? Yeah. And it chooses cut. So how do we apply that today? It's not much unclean. There's none of that stuff anymore, really. All of these creatures. So it says at the very last sentence, it says between living creatures that may be eaten. Okay. Okay, regulations concerning every living thing that moves in the water and every creature that moves about on the ground. You must distinguish between the clean and unclean, between living creatures and that may be eaten and those that may not be eaten. I know it's talking about eating, but I just had this picture. Like nowadays, the only thing really it's not an animal that's unclean. It's people, right? It's people. You could have a very toxic. I mean, God, folks, if you could do one thing, I pray that you would have salvation first, but and you'd be in heaven with us. But while here on earth, there's one thing. It would be to have wisdom in choosing and associating with the right friends. Boy, people, things that cause people to sin and those people that cause good people to sin. Chapter 12, Leviticus. The Lord said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites, a woman who becomes pregnant and gives birth to a son will be ceremonially unclean for 7 days, just as she is unclean during her monthly period. On the 8th day, the boy is to be circumcised. The woman must wait 33 days to be purified from her bleeding. She must not touch anything sacred or go to the sanctuary until the days of her purification are over. If she gives birth to a daughter for 2 weeks, the woman will be unclean, as during her period. Then she must wait 66 days, which is double the boy, to be purified from her bleeding. When the days of her purification for a son or daughter are over, she is to bring to the priest at the entrance to the tent of meeting a year-old lamb for a burnt offering and a young pigeon or a dove for a sin offering. He shall offer them before the Lord to make atonement for her, and then she will be ceremonially clean from her flow of blood. These are the regulations for the woman who gives birth to a boy or a girl. If she cannot afford a lamb, she is to bring 2 doves or 2 young pigeons, one for a burnt offering and the other for a sin offering. In this way, the priest will make atonement for her, and she will be clean." The Lord said to Moses, chapter 13, "And Aaron, when anyone has a swelling or a rash or a bright spot on his skin that may become an infectious skin disease, he must be brought to Aaron the priest or to one of his sons who is a priest. The priest is to examine the sore on his skin, and if the hair in the sore has turned white and the sore appears to be more than skin deep, it is an infectious skin disease. When the priest examines him, he shall pronounce him ceremonially unclean. If the spot on his skin is white but does not appear to be more than skin deep, and the hair does not turn white, the priest is to put the infected person in isolation for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest is to examine him, and if he sees that the sore is unchanged and has not spread in the skin, he is to keep him in isolation another 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest is to examine him again, and if the sore has faded and has not spread in the skin, the priest shall pronounce him clean. It is only a rash. The man must wash his clothes, and he will be clean. But if the rash does spread, and in his skin after he has shown himself to the priest to be pronounced clean, he must appear before the priest again. The priest is to examine him, and if the rash is spread in the skin, he shall pronounce him unclean. It is an infectious disease. When anyone has an infectious skin disease, he must be brought to the priest. The priest is to examine him, and if there is a white swelling in the skin that has turned the hair white, and if there is a raw flesh in the swelling, it is a chronic skin disease, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. He is not to put him in isolation because he is already unclean. If the disease breaks out all over his skin, and so far as the priest can see, it covers all the skin of the infected person from head to foot, the priest is to examine him, and if the disease has covered his whole body, he shall pronounce that person clean. Since it has all turned white, he is clean. But whenever raw flesh appears on him, he will be unclean. When the priest sees the raw flesh, he shall pronounce him unclean. The raw flesh is unclean. He has an infectious skin disease, or infectious disease. Should the raw flesh change and turn white, he must go to the priest. The priest is to examine him, and if the sores have turned white, the priest shall pronounce the infected person clean. Then he will be clean. When someone has a boil on his skin and it heals, and in the place where the boil was a wet swelling or reddish white spot appears, he must present himself to the priest. The priest is to examine it, and if it appears to be more than skin deep, and the hair in it has turned white, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is an infectious skin disease that has broken out where the boil was. But if, when the priest examines it, there is no white hair in it, and it is not more than skin deep and has faded, then the priest is to put him in isolation for 7 days. If it is spreading in the skin, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is infectious. But if the spot is unclean and he has not spread, it is only a scar from the boil, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. When someone has a burn on his skin and a reddish white or white spot appears in the raw flesh of the burn, the priest is to examine the spot, and if the hair in it has turned white and it appears to be more than skin deep, it is an infectious disease that has broken out in the burn. The priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is an infectious skin disease. But if the priest examines it, and there is no white hair in the spot, and it is no more than skin deep and has faded, then the priest is to put him in isolation for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest is to examine him, and if it is spreading in the skin, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is an infectious skin disease. If, however, the spot is unchanged and has not spread in the skin, but has faded, it is a swelling from the burn, and the priest shall pronounce them clean. It is only a scar from the burn. If a man or a woman has a sore on the head or on the chin, the priest is to examine the sore, and if it appears to be more than skin deep and the hair in it is yellow and thin, the priest shall pronounce that person unclean. It is an itch, an infectious skin disease of the head or chin. But if, when the priest examines this kind of sore, it does not seem to be more than skin deep and there is no black hair in it, then the priest is to put the infected person in isolation for 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest is to examine the sore. And if the itch is not spread and there is no yellow hair in it, it does not appear to be more than skin deep, he must be shaved except for the diseased area, and the priest is to keep him in isolation another 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest is to examine the itch, and if it is not spread in the skin and it is no more than skin deep, the priest shall pronounce him clean. He must wash his clothes, and he will be clean. But if the itch does spread in the skin after he is pronounced clean, the priest is to examine him, and if the itch has spread in the skin, the priest does not need to look for yellow hair, the person is unclean. If, however, in this judgment it is unchanged and black hair has grown in it, the itch has healed, he is clean, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. When a man or woman has white spots on the skin, the priest is to examine them, and if the spots are dull white, it is a harmless rash and is broken out on the skin. The person is clean. When a man has lost his hair and is bald, he is clean. Whew, I'm clean, man. If he has lost his hair from the front of his scalp and has a bald forehead, he is clean. But if he has a red dash, white sore on his head, bald head, or forehead, it is an infectious skin disease breaking out on his head or forehead. The priest is to examine him, and if the swollen sore on his head or forehead is reddish white, like an infectious skin disease, the man is diseased and is unclean. The priest shall pronounce him unclean because of the sore on his head. The person with such an infectious disease must wear torn clothes, let his hair be unkept, cover the lower part of his face, and cry out, unclean, unclean. As long as he has the infection, he remains unclean. He must live alone. He must live outside the camp. I'm saying, like if you had sin and they put these guys in isolation, what if we saw somebody in our life, a loved one, and they had this sin problem, whatever it was, and we say, hey, we know you're doing this and it's going to take you down the wrong path. We're going to put you in isolation for a while and try to give you some time to get on the right path. Of course, this isn't dealing with that as much as it is dealing with actual skin infections. I'm just trying to draw a parallel into the spiritual, and it might not be there. But I'm just thinking out loud that, if someone, say, cousin, young guy, goes to a party tonight, Friday, and at this party, someone offers him meth, right? Hey, smoke this Mexican meth. It's the best from Mexico, better than a Cuban cigar. And he smokes it for whatever reason. The guy gets hooked. Wouldn't it be nice if you noticed that right away, brought that guy through a rehab or an intervention, set him aside for weeks or however long it took him? But no, what we do in our culture, oh, he's all right, or oh, he did it, he's doing meth, oh. And you never confront it, guys. How are we going to help people if they're over there doing malgramiento cosas malgramiento, bad things and ill intent things, if we don't ever go and help them, if we don't confront them, just, hey, I'm going to tell you a secret. You see John over there? Yeah, John, man, he's all messed up. He's smoking meth. He stole his mama's purse. Oh, shh, be quiet. There comes John. Society without God's Bible, without God's direction. It's truly a sad society, guys. Society thinks, oh, I'm a bachelor's degree in psychology. Oh, I'm a master's, doctorates. And, well, that's fine. I mean, I love education. I love learning. and many of those psychologists and stuff that has learned a human knowledge um, through trial and error and stuff. Human knowledge is built upon knowledge, and today's psychologists, doctors, they're finding out, okay, well, this works, this doesn't. We have 10 years of data on these particular things, and and that's fine. Those people really can help. But this, right? This word, this Bible, if everyone in America would read this every morning, I would say there's 70% fewer psychologists that would be needed tomorrow. Okay. So, verse 45, this person with such an infectious disease must wear torn clothes, left his hair unkept, cover the lower part of his face, and cry out, unclean, unclean. As long as he has the infection, he remains unclean. He must live alone. He must live outside the camp. If any clothing is contaminated with mildew, any woolen or linen clothing, any woven or knitted material of linen or wool, any leather or anything made of leather, and if the contamination of the clothing of leather or woven or knitted material or any leather article is greenish or reddish, it is spreading mildew and must be shown to the priest. The priest is to examine the mildew, isolate the affected article for 7 days. On the seventh day, he is to examine it, and if the mildew has spread in the clothing or the woven or knitted material or the leather, whatever its use, it is a destructive mildew. The article is unclean. He must burn up the clothing or the woven or knitted material of wool or linen or any leather article that has the contamination in it, because the mildew is destructive, and the article must be burned up. But if, when the priest examines it, the mildew has not spread in the clothing or the woven or knitted material on the leather article, he shall order that the contaminated article be washed. Then he is to isolate it for another 7 days. After the affected article has been washed, the priest is to examine it, and if the mildew has not changed in its appearance, even though it has not spread, it is unclean. Burn it with fire, whether the mildew has affected one side or the other. If, when the priest examines it, the mildew has faded after the article has been washed, he is to tear the contaminated part out of the clothing or the leather or the woven knitted material. But if it reappears in the clothing or the woven knitted material or in the leather article, it is spreading, and whatever has the mildew must be burned with fire. The clothing or the woven or knitted material or any other leather article that has been washed and is rid of the mildew must be washed again, and it will be clean. These are the regulations concerning contamination by mildew in woolen or linen clothing, woven or knitted material, or any other leather article, for pronouncing them clean or unclean. Boom, that's a lot of stuff, okay? Now, when I'm reading this, I'm seeing things like this. He says, if you get this mildew, right? Mildew can kill you. So I'm just going to liken. I'm not sure if this is the right way to do it. I'm just going to liken it 23 minutes fast. I'm going to liken it to sin. So if you got sin on your clothing, right? You got sin on your article of your shirt right here. You take it to the priest. Hey, is this, well, let's see, this is going to be bad or whatever. Yeah, it is bad. Let's burn it. Just get rid of the whole thing. Second one. Yeah, it was bad, but it looks like it's fading. So we're going to tear off that piece. We're probably going to. So what does that mean in our life? Like if you have mildew on you, not your skin, guys, not your skin, on your spirit, right? If you have this thing, I'm just going to use pornography, for example, because there's a lot of guys out there with problems with pornography. It's freaking sad. It's destructive. It takes away from you. It kills. It destroys your imaginations. It so destructive to the psychology of men. And then these men who are destroyed psychologically because of the power of pornography hurt women, because then they start thinking about them in a porno way, and not watching over, not speaking over their wife, building them up, not protecting her, not pouring love into her. it becomes something corrupted. So what do? Take it to the priest, right? Take it to your friend. Say, hey man, I got this thing. I got this blot of evil, the sin that's just on my body, right? It's on my clothes. It's almost affecting me. It could affect me. Um, and what is the prescription in those old days for this mold or mildew? One was either destroy the whole article of clothing, or two, you cut out that section, right? Why not just leave it there, and throw some dirt on it, maybe rub it down, make it smaller, not so noticeable. Hey man, is that a little bit of uh, evil, and is that a little bit of perversion on you? Is that a little bit of promiscuity um, on you? Take it out, pull it out, throw it in the fire. Just have nothing to do with it. It's 26 minutes, almost 27, guys. Thank you for attending the chapters where we're in, 11 through 13. Yes. And I hope there was something in here that would really help you. God bless. God give you strength, man. You got to spend time with God. You can't just be like, hey, God, I hadn't talked to you in 12 years, or, please bless me. Help me do what I want to do today. Give me the strength to do what I want to do and what I think is best. No, guys. You got to, if you're going to be in a relationship, it's like being married. Are you going to date your girl till she's 80? Or are you going to marry her and commit? Same thing with Christ. Same thing with God. Are you just going to date God? Hey, God, Sunday. Going to church, my Bible. It's Sunday. I'm going to church, my Bible. And I can't wait till church is over because I'm putting my Bible down till next Sunday. That's not a relationship. Every day. Every day.